But what struck me is when Secretary Carter and General Dunford said that we asked the president for what we need to fight ISIS in Syria, and the president gave us what we asked for. Well, if 250 advisors is what you asked for, you need to ask for more, because that's not enough. These are 10-man teams with about 500-man units that act as advisors. They call for fire, they conduct medevacs, and like your report says, they ensure that there's not friendly fire. But there needs to be a conventional component to this to be able to protect those Americans if something happens, to be able to protect those units, to be able to plus up and match ISIS firepower with U.S. firepower.
But is this as much as U.S. public opinion wants? Because as we saw in the report, it is the Syrian Kurdish forces that are doing the ground fighting itself. That's probably the way U.S. public opinion wants it, no?
Well, public opinion versus military success and strategic success is what you have to weigh. The public, it briefs great to the public. Listen, there are American advisors, and we're using indigenous forces to do this. But those of us that have worked with indigenous forces in Iraq and Afghanistan, we know that what's important is that force that you're using to take back territory from ISIS, one that will be accepted by the local population. And in the report on Shahada, of course, the people welcomed the forces in after they defeated ISIS. But at the end of the day, this needs to be a majority Sunni force, much like in Iraq, to control these areas like Raqqa and Deir ez-Zor. You're not going to be able to control these two towns with Kurds, Yazidis, Christians, Armenians, and this hodgepodge of rebels that you're putting together without it being a majority Sunni military-age force from Raqqa, from Deir ez-Zor, from northern Syria. It can have these other components in it, but the majority force, the force that will prevent it from backsliding into ISIS control and will keep it from backsliding into the regime's control, it needs to be a Sunni force from that area.
And of course, earlier, Michael, you were mentioning that there's this sort of three-way battle going on, what with the Russians and the Syrians, the U.S.-backed rebels, and ISIS itself. But of course, there's another party to it, and our team saw that, which are the Turkish army, which their biggest preoccupation are the same Syrian Kurds that the U.S. is backing.
Exactly. On any given day, if the Turks hit ISIS, they're doing the right thing. If the Turks hit a Kurdish position, they're doing the wrong thing. If Russia hits ISIS, they're doing the right thing. If they hit a U.S.-backed rebel group, they're doing the wrong thing. On any given day, you have these external forces doing both good and bad things that just continue to make Syria spiral out of control. You have to. The force that you're working with, and that's why there isn't a majority Sunni force, because they're not being protected from Russian airstrikes. The Kurds are brokering, they're hedging their bets with the Russians and us to make sure that Turkish fighters don't hit their positions. There are so many factors at play, but it all hinges on one thing: being able to put a safe zone in place and be able to protect it with military air defense assets to keep Turks from bombing Kurdish positions that they're concerned about, to keep the Russians from bombing Sunni positions that they're concerned about. And it's not as difficult as everybody says it is. You're starting to put advisors on the ground. The assets, the conventional assets need to follow that actually are able to protect the safe zone, be able to shoot down a Russian jet if it comes in, be able to shoot down a Turkish jet if it comes in. When I say shoot down, that's after the escalation of violence. That's after warning them that they're in airspace. That's not an automatic thing to do, but you're right. Everybody has an enemy on this battlefield, and as your reporters said earlier in our conversation, is that ISIS seems to be secondary to everyone.
ISIS seems to be secondary to everyone, but how, again, you just said that if need be, do what the Turks did that one time, which is shoot down a Russian plane. Right now, how should the U.S. be handling Russia?
Well, Russia puts an air defense denial asset in, the S-300s. The U.S. puts in Patriot batteries in U.S.-controlled territory. You match the Russian ground capability. You match their military capability. We don't have to establish an air base in Syria, but we should put in assets in areas where conventional U.S. forces protect the population that's fleeing ISIS-controlled area and fleeing Aleppo. There's no place for them to go, and it's causing this refugee crisis in Europe. You do that. You match capability. Russia has S-300s. The U.S. puts in Patriot battery systems to protect airspace to put a no-fly zone in place. And then the funny thing about this is that we actually had Patriot systems in place a year ago, but we took them out of Turkey, and they would have been able to cover northern Syria. Well, we took them out because it was unrelated completely to the Syrian conflict, but I personally think it was a condition that the Russians and the Iranians had for the Iran deal to go in place. Just based on the administration was not surprised that Russia went into Syria after the Iran deal.
Michael, one final question on this. Again, what you're suggesting would mean that the U.S., after leaving Afghanistan to its degree and Iraq, would be now getting really dug in Syria.
These are assets. You have to do this. This is realism. You can't do it with 250 guys and 50 guys. You can't do it working with Iranian proxies in Iraq. You can't do it by ignoring the continuous violations of the ceasefire by Assad, Russia, and Iran in Syria. You have to face reality.
Even if it means staying for years, possibly decades?
I propose that you go with the South Korea, West Germany, Japan construct. It works. It's unpopular because people don't understand it. But what you do is you stay. You build a base, and eventually, over 10 to 20 years, it becomes a place where U.S. service members want to take their families. It becomes a nice tour. U.S. is in Japan. They were in West Germany before Germany became whole. We're in South Korea now. You stay. In Iraq, 2 out of the 3 parties want us to be in Iraq. The Sunnis and Kurds want U.S. bases. The Iranian-pressured Shia government does not. You have to do these things. Turkey wants a stronger U.S. ally in NATO. They're not seeing it with this administration. If you want to kill ISIS and bring stability to the northern Middle East, you have to be involved, militarily involved, and you have to sell it to the American public. You need a commander-in-chief to do that. You go with the Japan, South Korea, West Germany construct that led to stability in Germany, stability in Japan, and we still have that presence in South Korea that is a major deterrent. And the South Koreans want us there. That's realism.